This is a very important show, very important conversation given the times in which we live. We're
okay,
good?
Thanks for the clarification.
Are we good, Sheldon? Okay. Folks, very important conversation today with my guest, Dr. Calvin Fields. We're going to talk about a number of things, but it's going to zero in, laser focus on one topic. You need to know this information. Share this right now. Share this link. Share this show with your friends, with your family. You want to understand what's happening in America today, you need to understand this information. Free market capitalism is only possible when it is rooted in the foundation of the freedoms and responsibilities guaranteed in the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution, in turn, is rooted in the principles of Christianity. For only God allows and protects freedoms as necessary preconditions for capitalism to emerge and prosper. Taken together, God created free market capitalism with its promises of the freedom and liberty to conduct business, transactions, and accumulate private property under the authority of God, laid the foundation upon which America was founded. You take God out of the picture and you lose the Constitution. You take the Constitution out of the picture and you lose freedom. Take freedom out of the picture and you lose capitalism. Take capitalism out of the picture and you lose the security and the power of wealth. Take wealth out of the picture and you become a third world country. This is the communist plan unfolding right now before our very eyes, right here in America. My guest today is Dr. Calvin Fields. He is the author of The Hypnotic Communist, The Satanic Destruction of America. Dr. Fields is a former professor of management and is considered an expert in the area of organizational management. Dr. Fields, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. I really enjoyed meeting you guys. I sure recognize the words you just read.
You should recognize them. That came right out of your book.
Good.
Yeah.
Whoever thought that must have been pretty smart.
That's right. Well, listen, I want to quote you again because this is from the last page of your book. It's a great way to start our conversation, Calvin, because I believe it will orient people's thinking immediately to the underlying issues and to our only hope. So this is what Dr. Fields wrote. Again, Hypnotic Communist, the Satanic Seduction of America. This is from page 350, Calvin. Quote,
okay.
Our forefathers pledged their lives and their fortunes when they declared independence from Britain. We must realize now that for America's freedom and liberty to continue, we also must pledge our lives and our fortunes to continue to uphold the truth and righteousness of God for future generations. We should quit fearing man and start fearing God. Only a return to complete surrender to God's leadership will this again be possible. Have we no less responsibility than our forefathers to our God? Did the forefathers die in vain to gain and protect constitutional freedoms? Let's hope not. Freedom has an expensive price. Freedom is not free. Calvin, many Americans are waking up to the very serious place we are at in our national history. Forces of evil have been unleashed against our Republican form of government and the freedoms that it allows. But one thing I want to make perfectly clear, friends, perfectly clear from the onset is this: the real target, and I've said this many times on many different platforms, the real target, the real goal of those who inflame, agitate, and violently oppose truth freedom, and liberty is the destruction of Christianity. That is the ultimate prize and goal. Calvin, would you agree with that assessment?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I would add one, a little bit different slant, maybe. It is the destruction of Christianity, but it's, Karl Marx was a Satanist and demon-possessed, and the energy that inspired all his work when he wrote Das Kapital and all his other works was satanic, and he was at war with God. And so he not only wants the destruction of the church, which is God's creation, Jesus Christ, but he wants to destroy God himself and take his throne. And so this is the ultimate plan, as I would sort of frame it, my understanding. It's certainly consistent with your point of view. He wants to destroy God and take his throne. And if he can't destroy God and take his throne, he wants to destroy the next best thing, which would be mankind, ourselves, and the church.
Yes, yes. And I've been pointing this out recently to many folks on many different platforms. Those that are creating the violence today, those that are purposely and they're hiding behind quote unquote justice or fairness and the importance of Black lives, those who are fomenting this hatred and this violence, murdering innocent people and destroying the businesses and fortunes and homes of innocent people, they state clearly in their own literature that they are Marxists, they are communists, and they're agitating and promoting everything that is anti-God. In fact, some of them come right out and say we are Satanists. Have you seen that, Calvin?
Yes, I have. I've documented that. Mm-hmm. And a notable politician, Maxine Waters,
yes,
is one of the few who has actually admitted that she's a communist. Now, Bernie Sanders says he's a socialist, but he's hedging. There's no such thing as really a socialist per se. Even the word socialism is a frame or a front, or is synonymous with the real word communism, which in the 1930s, the Communist Party sought to outlaw the use of the word communism in America because it was revealing their identity.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, Bernie Sanders has become a multimillionaire playing the role of socialist. Just as a side note.
Yes, that's ironic, isn't it? Hitler said in Mein Kampf, which he wrote in prison, where he should have been all along, said that it's not like they want to destroy capitalism so per se. They want all capitalism and the money for themselves. So they want to destroy our control of capitalism is a little bit more concise explanation.
Yes.
They know they need it.
Yes. Calvin, one of the many reasons that I enjoyed your book is that you took the time to lay the groundwork so that readers could understand the slow, methodical, very deliberate plans that the enemy of our souls, which is the same as the enemy of America, we're talking about Satan. He has slowly, methodically, and meticulously woven his plans and his strategies through our government, our educational institution, and now many churches. America was founded as a republic for a good reason. Yet today, Calvin, many people talk about America as a democracy. America is not a democracy. Perhaps it has slidden into that practice, but America is a republic. So, Calvin, explain for those who have joined us today, what's the difference and why does that matter?
Well, I mean, every time I see that word democracy on TV, I just gives me the creeps, because it couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, I even see it in big, bold, red letters on Fox News, and they really ought to know better than that. I'm just wondering if they're ever going to get it right. But America is a constitutional republic because a democracy is a kind of a hoax. I mean, that's where people vote popularly for the popular politician or the candidate. And if we were a pure democracy, then the biggest state in the union, having the greatest population, would win every election. So guess who would control the country? What state?
Yeah, California.
California. California has 39 million people. So we have protections in the Constitution with electors in place, where each state has 2 senators and some congressmen to equal 538 electors. And we're a constitutional representative republic, so that these 538 electors cast their votes on behalf of the American people. That's entirely consistent with the U.S. Constitution. And the main advantage and the main strength of this system we have is that the big cities and the big states with all the population, or most of the population, don't get to choose. The votes are evened out among the states, among the areas, and especially the rural areas, so that it creates a fair representative republic. For example, the reason we're still hanging on as well as we are with the rural area is because of the U.S. Constitution, that we're a representative republic. If the rural areas were not equally represented, we'd already be a pure democracy and then a communist state.
And Calvin, is it not true that that's one reason why we see the progressives, the leftists, the Marxists continually argue for doing away with the Electoral College, doing away with this quote unquote antiquated system of voting, because they understand if they can do that, then they'll capture forever a form of government of the United States?
That's absolutely correct. Absolutely is what they're after. And all their agenda, every single bit of their agenda, is strictly for that sole purpose, to overthrow the country.
Yeah. Here's an interesting phrase. People have heard it used a number of times, no doubt, over the years. Separation of church and state. Listen to me, folks. Separation of church and state, as it is used today by the media and Marxist, progressive, leftist, Democrat Party, is a myth. It's a myth. It's not found in the United States Constitution or any of our founding documents. Let that sink in. Separation of church and state is not found in the U.S. Constitution or any of our founding documents. Calvin, I know you know this. Where did that phrase come from?
It's a shocker to most people, but that came from the Communist Constitution.
Please say that again.
It came from the Communist Constitution.
How about that, folks?
It also came from another place. Originally, it came from one of our own, Thomas Jefferson.
Yes.
And he used it. He is the originator of the phrase. Mm-hmm. But the purpose of the phrase was the opposite of the way it's used today and interpreted today. Back then, when Jefferson was responding to the Danbury Baptist Church fear that the government was going to start trying to use the Baptist Church to run the Baptist Church. So they wanted a wall of separation so that the federal government would not bother them. And so Jefferson wrote them a letter saying, basically, I promise you we're not going to use this wall of separation to intimidate or interfere. It's just the opposite. We're not going to interfere with religion in America. However, subsequently, the Communist Party picked up on our phrase. If you backtrack just a minute, the communists always use what we have and turn it against us. For example, during 9/11, they used our airplanes against us. They always use what we have against us. They use our words against us by using our words but changing the meanings. So we really don't understand what they're talking about when they're talking on the Senate floor or in Congress. So they adopted this phrase, separation of church and state, and put it in the Communist Constitution later on to deceive the West.
Yes, yes. And I want to point something out here to our guests, those who have joined us, are viewing, listening. What Calvin just described, and I hope that you picked up on this, folks. Separation of church and state. When Jefferson responded to the Danbury Baptist Association and their concerns and fears about the federal government impending, deliberately becoming involved in the free expression of religion, Jefferson said that separation is there for a reason, to prevent the government from doing that. So you don't have to be concerned. Well, my, how times have changed, folks. My, how times have changed. State governments all over the United States of America have blown right through that wall and have declared as if they are the final authority, which Romans 13 clearly says they are not. They are established by God. That means they are delegated his authority, and they are only a legitimate government insofar as they follow God's laws. They're not free to arbitrarily enforce or do whatever they want. So to you pastors and Christians out there that are making the argument that Romans 13 says we are subject ourselves to government, you are ill-informed, misinformed, and might I say, ignorant of what the scriptures actually teach. It teaches the exact opposite. And state governments all over America have asserted themselves as the final authority in saying, churches, you will not open. And pastors, shame on you for listening to them. Shame on you for closing your church doors. The state, whether federal, state level, has no authority to tell you that. That is against what God has established them to do, which it says in Romans 13, be a minister for good to you. They've been a minister for evil against the church. Wake up, church. Wake up. Calvin, let's talk about free market economics. Let's talk about capitalism and why the attacks that we see right now, because that's one of the goals, the Marxist, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, that they clearly stated in their literature, folks, this isn't about black people. Stop being brainwashed. Stop it.
Yeah.
This isn't about black people. This is about organizations who are taking advantage of black people. You should be outraged by that, brothers and sisters, especially you who claim you know God and what his word says. You should be outraged. They are trying to destroy the economic and capitalistic economy of America. The attacks are clearly communist, but they're even worse than that. They're Satanist. I can hardly believe, Calvin, all the people who think that a centralized economic model is better than capitalism. Please, could you take some time, Calvin, and explain free market economics and why a centralized economic model never works. Never works.
Well, it's all about human nature, the assumptions of what human nature entails, and the centralized command and control worldview, which is communism, assumes that man doesn't know what he needs, and that the Communist Party knows better than the man or the woman. And so they want to control mankind who's inferior to them. You see, these people deep down inside believe they're communist, and they implicitly know they're devils, Satanists. at some level. So they think like Satan, their father. They think like Satan that they're better than God, that they're better than people. On the other hand, capitalism, which can only function under a constitutional republic that guarantees freedom, it's kind of a reciprocal. Constitutional freedom guarantees capitalism, and capitalism guarantees constitutional freedom. So you have to have both. You can't just have one. If you do just think you have one, then you don't have either one. But capitalism assumes correctly that mankind will do what's best for his self-interest. And so like Adam Smith said many years ago, that it's nothing wrong with the self-interest in property ownership, because if we own our property, we're going to work hard for it and produce excess for other people, which is what Fred Smith, the owner, founder of Federal Express, and all the great entrepreneurs and CEOs we have who founded great companies, they found them out of self-interest, but the rest of us benefit from their self-interest. So capitalism assumes correctly about human nature. And so that's why it works. People want to work. They don't mind working hard if it is about the property they own. The original settlers tried communism when they came over, and they proved it to themselves. It didn't work when they didn't own the property privately, each one individually. Conflict broke out and strife, and they fought among themselves until their ways were recognized, and William Bradford allowed for the possession of private property. Then everything straightened out just fine. So
Yes.
There's a big difference between command and control, which assumes that you don't know what's right for yourself, and you'll work hard, but only because you're forced to as slaves. That's a key point. Under communism, you have no freedom to accumulate or acquire private property. You're forced to work for the state. Therefore, you'll never reap the benefits of your hard work. On the other hand, in capitalism, whoever works hard and works smart gets to keep their private property and be blessed financially and economically. It's all about free markets. Capitalism believes in supply and demand. The equation, right now, our supply and demand equation is imbalanced because of the artificial government intervention and, problems with the so-called virus and then the riots. But just leave it alone and get out of the way, government and Communist Party, and it will rebalance itself naturally because it's a natural law of God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it isn't ironic, Calvin. I mean, that's one of the bait and switches that communists use. They promote labor maximizing their production for their own benefit, but at the same time, or on the other hand, they're also saying that all property and everything should be centralized and owned by the state. You have no private property. So what they promise to laborers, if they'll follow the communist creed, is just a dream, because in reality, they don't have private property rights. They can't accumulate. And so that actually works in the reverse effect of labor saying, well, what's the point in working hard and trying to accumulate when I get nowhere?
That's right. That's the conclusion. That's the conclusion.
Yeah.
So that's what causes it to be a forced system where people are forced to work like slaves, which is eventually what happened. This is what will happen to America if we don't wake up. We'll all be slaves, except for the tiny percent at the top, and they'll just suck in everything.
Yes. Yeah. Well, now you mentioned private property, Calvin, so I want to bring that up because that is, folks, listen, private property is a sure foundation for any free people. Why is that so important, Calvin, that we continue to hammer this truth home? What happens when private property rights are eroded?
Well, I mean, think about what private property is. I mean, it could be a lot of things. It could be, land. It could be, your house, your car, money, financial resources as a form of private property, and so are guns. Guns are private property. Mm-hmm. So just think about it. If you lose control and possession of your guns and your money and your house and your car, and the Communist Party acquires it, what do you have left? I mean, you can't buy anything. You don't have any money. You don't have a house to live in. You have to live in the house you're assigned to. You don't have a gun to defend yourself, which means very unlikely you'll ever get your freedom back. I mean, guns are necessary as private property to keep the communists from taking everything we have to begin with. And if we don't use those weapons, which is illegal according to Christ, remember? Christ told a story about carry a sword. Then if we don't respond appropriately at some point, then we will lose all our property rights. They're essential for personal human freedom.
Yes.
Property rights.
Yes. Amen. Amen. Now we're going to get ready here in just a moment. Calvin, those of you who have joined us, we're going to take a sponsor break here in just a moment. And we have information about our upcoming conference. The Go Therefore 2020 conference is July the 24th, 5th, and 6th. Now, this year, unfortunately, we've been forced to do this as an online event only. And believe me, brothers and sisters, I hated having to do that, because for me, it's all about getting together and fellowshipping with brothers and sisters. But here's the reason why we had to do it. We could not guarantee that the host facility would allow us to hold it. They couldn't guarantee that here in Ohio we would be full access. So when we talked about this, we thought, well, we can't wait until 3 weeks or a week before the event and tell people all of a sudden, oh, you'll have to seek a refund for your airfare. You have to seek a refund for your hotels because we're not going to be able to hold it. We had to make that decision enough in advance so people had time to make appropriate arrangements. And that's the only reason we did it this way, because Kathy and I absolutely hated doing that. But the conference is going to be here. We're going to play a promo here in a second. It gives you a list of all the speakers that are going to be presenting. And the theme, folks, the theme for this year's conference is What Now, Church? What now, church? In light of everything that has transpired in the last 6 months, and in light of everything that's happening right now, what we see coming in the immediate future, how must the church respond? This is a very, very important conference, and messages that are going to be geared towards answering that and those questions. So we'll come back. We'll take your questions. I already see that we have one. We'll begin to answer your questions when we come back right after this break from our sponsors and the conference promotional. You can register at GoThereforeConference.com. GoThereforeConference.com. You can register there for this conference. You don't want to miss it, folks. We'll be right back and take your questions after this break. Stay with us.
Dr. Mike is sponsored by LifeVantage. Take charge of your health by effectively reducing oxidative stress and promoting mitochondria function with Protandim NRF1 and NRF2 synergizers. www.mica68.lifevantage.com. Works, LLC. Custom-made concealed carry holsters, mag carriers, and knife carriers. www.works.com. Altha Technology provides website hosting, live video streaming, and solutions for all your new media needs. www.althatech.com. The Transforming Word Ministries, a multimedia ministry outreach of Dr. Mike Spalding. Contact us today at www.thetransformingword.com. Go Therefore Conferences, www.gothereforeconference.com, promoting the best cutting-edge Christian content to equip and encourage the body of Jesus Christ.
Hi friends, Dr. Mike Spaulding here to announce details of the Go Therefore 2020 conference. This year, we will be providing a powerful lineup of scholars, researchers, authors, and Bible teachers for the equipping and edification of the body of Christ. Please note that the Go Therefore 2020 conference is an online event. This will enable you to participate wherever you live. Registration is now open at www.gothereforeconference.com. The cost for this one-of-a-kind conference is only $59. The theme of this year's Go Therefore conference is What Now, Church? What lies ahead for the Church of Jesus Christ? How must we respond to the government's reaction to the coronavirus? What must Christians do to address the so-called new normal? This year, our speakers include Dr. Michael Lake of Kingdom Intelligence Briefing, Pastor Carl Gallups of Freedom Friday Radio, Pastor Caspar McCloud of Spiritual Encounters Radio, Russ Dizdar of Shatter the Darkness Ministries, David Heavner, actor and film director of The Last Evangelist on davidheavner.tv, Coach Dave Daubenmire of Pass the Salt Ministries, Pastor Brandon Gallups of Redeemed Ministries Healing and Recovery Center, author and researcher Doug Woodward, author and researcher Carl Tykrib, author, evangelist, and director of Hand of Help Ministries Michael Boldea, author and researcher L.A. Marzulli, researcher and Bible teacher David Paxton, constitutional scholar and host of Samuel Adams Returns Tom Novalis, author and evangelist Preston Condra, Stephen Menking, senior editor and host of On the Objective and the Amateur Society podcasts, David Arthur of I Belong, Amen Ministries, film director and researcher Tom Dunn, author and director of Omega Dynamics Jamie Walden, author and editor-in-chief of Technocracy News Patrick Wood, author, pastor, and president of Chafer Seminary Dr. Andy Woods, and of course me, Dr. Mike Spaulding. You may register right now at the conference website, www.gothereforeconference.com. The conference starts Friday, July 24th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and concludes Sunday, July 26th at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. All registrants will have 2 full weeks to watch every presentation from this year's conference. Conference schedule is on the website, www.gothereforeconference.com. You do not want to miss this event. What now, church? God bless you.
Hi, friends. Thanks for staying with us. I am talking with author Calvin Fields. The book is The Hypnotic Communist, The Satanic Seduction of America. Now, I want to point out also that if you're interested in this subject, if you want more information, you got to get Calvin's book. First of all, get that book. But I've also written on this, what's happening in America right now, extensively in my latest book, Upside Down in America, What Went Wrong and How Do We Make It Right Again? And I'll point something out to you. Chapter 17 in my book is titled, Communism is Satanism. I devote an entire chapter in this book to this subject, as well as chapter 18, Social Justice is Injustice. If you want to really understand what's happening today with the quote-unquote social justice warriors, get the book, Upside Down in America. It'll explain a lot. Calvin, thank you for staying with me. I know that we have several questions already that have come in. The first one that I saw came in. This one is from Facebook, Calvin, and someone is asking about corporate welfare. Where does that fit into what we've been talking about? What is your take on that, Calvin?
Well, corporate welfare is really a contradiction in terms. And, we really need to train ourselves how to recognize all the signs of communism. We need to understand what it's seeking and how it works. And I can tell just by the word corporate welfare, which is a contradiction in terms. Mm-hmm. Welfare and corporations are opposite. There's no compatibility between the two. And so this is a communist trick, a communist word, a communist term. We call it communiste, the communist language,
Yep.
using the English language with different meanings. It's a contradiction because they're trying to get corporations to be just a communist vassal, like a communist government would be, that make us dependent on corporations, 100% dependent on corporations,
Yes.
as well as any form of government a communist state government might be. So it should not be. There should not be anything as corporate welfare. And, what they're trying to do is the government now is, or I should say that the communist agents are using our government against us to select winners and losers in corporations. So you see, some corporations are very liberal and some corporations are not, but the ones that are real liberal are being used as dupes, to get people to believe in corporate welfare, that they should have to work for the corporation without getting paid. So, and they shouldn't be getting money from the government or anyone else. They should work by the free market principles that they espouse to believe in, since they're capitalist organizations.
Yes. Well, that's one of the things, Calvin, and I value your opinion, your viewpoint on this, but that's one of the things that's been revealed about our government right now. We're deeper into socialism than a lot of people believe. And here's one proof of that. Here's one proof of that in my view. The states, and I'll just use my own state, in Ohio. The state of Ohio, that would be Governor DeWine, Lieutenant Governor Husted, and Health Department Director Amy Acton. I pray that the first two are impeached and the last one is fired for what they've done to Ohioans. But what they did was they picked and chose the winners. They said, you're non-essential, you're essential. And what that amounted to, listen, folks, this is what it amounted to. They said Walmart can stay open. Mom and pop, that local grocery store, you got to close.
Yeah.
They said the big box stores, Lowe's, Menards, Home Depot, well, you're essential, so you can stay open. But you mom and pop hardware stores, you got to close down. And all those things that Walmart sells, that Lowe's sells, that Menards sells, that Home Depot sells, and all these other big store sells, guess what? That crippled mom and pop stores. And there are hundreds of businesses in Ohio that will not reopen because they were driven out of business, bankrupted by policies of the state, picking winners and losers. Friends, especially my friends in Ohio, you should be outraged at this. And yet, if you believe this, the polls, Ohioans support Governor DeWine and Amy Acton in their decisions. I think it's propaganda, and I think it's Luciferian propaganda. I think it's evil and wicked. So, Calvin, thank you for that. So here's another question. Well, I kind of answered that one already. Are we on the verge? So no, we're not on the verge of socialism. We're in the grips of socialism right now. Are there any other questions out there on Facebook, Kathy? Okay. Does anyone in the queue in the green room have any questions? A question for Calvin? If you do, please unmute your mic and ask. All right, we don't have any here either. So Calvin, let's continue on with our conversation then. Now, I want to make sure that folks understand what we're talking about when we talk about communism. It's much more, listen, folks, it's much more than an economic theory. It is so, the economic portion of communism is minor, in my opinion. It's much more than just an economic theory, isn't it, Calvin?
Absolutely, you're right. It's a worldview, and it's a satanic system. It's not even really a government. I mean, the communists are anti-government. It's a coalition or a facade of a dictatorship For example, Joseph Stalin was the first real dictator in the world, in the modern world, that is, I should say, and he was demon possessed. Well, he was a jealous cat, and I'm reading a book right now, the Gulag Archipelago, which is extremely revealing what it's like to live in a communist concentration camp when Stalin was a dictator. And
Was that
Stalin,
Solzhenitsyn, Calvin?
pardon me?
Was that
Yeah,
Solzhenitsyn?
that's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Alexander. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And Stalin was so psychotic and paranoid that even during the latter part of World War II, when his army, his soldiers came home, were starting to come home from the war, he arrested all of them. He arrested all of his own army personnel. And he would interview them and interrogate. They'd be in the prison system and being tortured to lie, to tell something about themselves, how they were disloyal to the Communist Party. And then he would mass murder, like, for example, 100 innocent men who served him in the war, get one disloyal person. And that's communism, if I could give you a metaphor for it. Because they cannot they can't stand any fair talk or free, freedom of the press or any freedom of ideas or independent ideas or speech, no freedom of speech, because they're totally paranoid that their regime is going to be threatened by individuals' differences of ideas. So they'll mass murder, 99% of people, to maybe get one traitor who's thinking independently. That's how insane it is.
That's
what
a
they
very
plan to
good
do
word.
here. Don't get me wrong. They're planning to do that here. I saw an estimate a few years ago. The estimate was that 40% of the American population would have to be murdered, for starters, immediately.
Yes.
So
Yes. And that's a feature, folks. Do your homework. It's available. The information is available. Just go find it. Communist regimes, that's one of the first things they do, is they have some type of purge. They justify it in some kind of communese, some kind of doublespeak, some kind of Luciferian twisted illogic, and they end up murdering millions of their own citizens, innocent people, because they're paranoid. And worse, communism, it has been infiltrating our government for decades, folks. The communists have been infiltrating our government, every aspect of our government and our culture. The communist vision for America, well, today all you need to do is read the Black Lives Matter literature, and they will tell you what their vision for America is. And if you can read that and go to the Antifa organization websites, and by the way, Antifa, folks, you need to understand that Antifa is an international terrorist organization. That's what they are. If you read their manifestos and their demands, what they're saying is, you should understand this. People like you and I, we're going to be lined up across the wall and shot first. That's what they plan for conservative, Bible-believing, born-again, blood-bought, spirit-filled believers who will not deny the Lord Jesus Christ a bullet to your head. That's the plan.
Correct.
And if you think that's hyperbole, then you have no clue what they're attempting to do. And they have co-opted and infiltrated Black Lives Matter and many other organizations, and they are using people who have compassion and a heart for others. They're using you against America and against the church. You've got to wake up, folks,
That's
and
right.
understand what's happening. So, Calvin, you chronicle in your book, pages 44 and 45. I'll let you speak to this, but communism, it has a plan, a vision for America, and people need to hear that. So please give us some of the details. What is the vision for America that groups like Antifa, Black Lives Matter, the communists that are behind them, what is their vision for America?
Well, I mean, it's pretty simple. I mean, these are really very simple-minded people. They're atheists, for starters. So you have to realize they have no concept of what it's like to be a born-again Christian. And maybe that's part of the reason that they hate us so bad. Their vision is very simple, is to gradually overturn the country, merge the communist countries, which is the primary two is Red China, obviously, we know now, and the Soviet Union. They want to merge those two countries with America gradually, imperceptibly. You know, the old story about you put the frog in the warm water and you gradually heat it. And by the time he gets where he's just about dead, he can't get out. But it was so gradual that he didn't know he was being cooked. Yeah. And that's pretty much the perfect metaphor for what they're doing to America. So they want to disassemble our government. And you listen to what they say in the news today, on TV, and on the internet. They'll tell you exactly what they're doing. They want to overturn America. They want to, what they're talking about right now is defunding the police. Okay, why are they doing that? Because they don't want any interference. They're criminals, you know.
Right, exactly.
Simple as that.
Yep.
They want to overturn Congress. I was just thinking today that, you know, communist countries have no president because they have no one to run against. When we vote, you have two candidates, one in each of the two parties, and one of them gets more votes than the other, and according to the Electoral College, of course, and that person becomes the new president. Well, in the communist bastions, they have one person running, period. Mm-hmm. And so the vote is oftentimes 80, 90% for that one person. Mm-hmm. Well, obviously, he's not outvoting anyone else, but what the vote is for is to see how much loyalty is in the population. So if 90% of the people vote for the communist president who's seeking to be a president again, they know that there's 10% they've got to find. Mm. And so they go about looking. They get suspicious and they're going to eliminate or make disappear or shoot them in the back of the head, put them in a concentration camp to last their life and work them to death. They're going to eliminate that 10%. So 100% of the population will have to bow down to the dictator. And that's what they want us to do. They want to be a satanic, demonic, communist dictator to be our God. They want the real God off the throne. They want us to fall down and worship the dictator. That's what they want. And they don't want any government. It's just like a prison system. You have the prison head, and then you have all the prisoners. And the head tells you what to think and feel. They tell you everything you're supposed to be. And you've got to be re-educated to learn to worship and praise the dictator, or else you're going to be in prison and die there the rest of your life. Simple as that.
Yes, that is very true. Now, one advantage, and thank you, Audrey, for bringing that up. One advantage to all of this, if there's a silver lining in any of this, folks are finally starting to wake up and see the reality of what's happening. That for so long they denied that this kind of stuff was the undercurrent. It was starting to percolate to the surface. So many people said, "Oh, you're crazy. You're a conspiracy theorist. You're this. You're that. The other thing. You're dramatic." And no way. Well, now people are starting to say, "Hey, This is really what's happening here. And so, folks, I would encourage you to do your homework, do your research, and then listen. Stop using all of these social media platforms to post your pictures that when you go to the restaurant or when you have your now listen to me. Use it for ministry. Use your social media platforms for ministry. Spread the truth. Be a truth bearer, a truth spreader. Now, I'm just going to warn you, when you do that, you're going to get haters. And you're going to get folks that'll come against that. Do it anyway. Jesus said, if they persecuted him, they're going to persecute you. So do it anyway. Because what's going to happen is you're going to win some. You're going to win some. There are people that are thirsting, begging, starving for truth. They want to know what's happening. They want to know the truth, not what the media tells them. The media is a pack of liars.
Yeah.
All the media in America, they are bound for hell. They're going to bust the gates of hell wide open because they're a pack of liars. But they're getting their paycheck from the corporations that are creating the narrative. So they're just being obedient employees. They're Luciferian stooges. That's what they are. That's what it boils down to. Calvin, most people don't know this, but here's a news flash. Communism is illegal in the United States of America, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Isn't that interesting?
Isn't that interesting?
You know, if this was truly a America we used to have, this would be all over the news. And it would nip it in the bud because it's the truth.
Yep.
And so the Communist Control Act of 1954 was a law that made it illegal to be a member of the Communist Party or to engage in communist activities. So it may not catch a lot of people by being members of the Communist Party because the Communist Party is really a small elite, relatively small, now it's still large, you know, by worldwide numbers. It is the only political party that's a world political party, really. But its leaders are Communist Party card-carrying members, but the bigger segment of the communists is their dupes and their accomplices and their fellow travelers. These people you see that you've been talking about on the TV lately are engaging in communist activities.
Yes.
So they should be arrested according to that 1954 law. Also, the Espionage Act of 1917. By the way, 1917 was the year that Russia fell to communism under the knife of Vladimir Lenin. So that's kind of a special year in kind of a perverse way, but that was a great year to have the Espionage Act made law, which makes it illegal for people such as communists to interfere in operations of the U.S. military. What do we see today? Well, our military is certainly not immune, are they? We've seen mass shootings on the bases. We see them trying to defund the police, which is a paramilitary. They don't want us to have a military, folks. The military is sworn by oath to protect American citizens, and they want that disappeared. They want them out of the way. So they're gradually trying to delete or eliminate all our strengths in the country, all our strengths, which includes the military, and take us over through this hypnotic propaganda process where especially people that don't know the Lord are really ripe and vulnerable to the seduction because you hear it day after day after day. It's just drummed in your people's heads on the TV and all the media, and you start to think, well, maybe it is true. And then other people around you say, yeah, I think that's true. Before you know it, the herd instinct has got you believing all these lies.
Yeah.
And then you're done. And I might add one more thing I just really want to say is what we're seeing now in the Democrat Party is we're seeing that these agitators in the streets, the communist agitators is what they really are, and propagandists, are now kind of indiscriminately attacking the Democrats and their constituents. They are literally attacking black people, black businesses. They're literally attacking Democrats with, no distinction. And so that's a sign of hope, because that's what they really intend to do ultimately in the final analysis, is destroy them too. As a matter of fact, after Christians are destroyed, they're going to go after the Democrats. They'll go after their original supporters. They put them in office because, like a crime, you can't have any witnesses. You see?
That's it. That's it. Yep, you're absolutely right. I think Lenin, Calvin, Lenin called them useful idiots, didn't he?
That's exactly right.
Yep.
And
So you get.
no one's ever been to document was the author of that, but we all assume that he was. And if you read Lenin's actual writing, it's pretty clear that he's the one probably said it, but he's so accurate. And he also called communism an infantile disorder. So
Yes.
that's a pretty apt description, infantile disorder.
Well, that's interesting that you should bring that up about some of the communists really exposing their agenda by murdering black people, by destroying the businesses of black people. They're really tipping their hand, folks, if you're paying attention. But one of the things that these folks have used to instigate and really to infuriate is class warfare. Class warfare, brothers and sisters, is a demonic strategy that we're seeing played out right now. It's being used to divide America so it's easier to conquer. Divide and conquer. Race baiting has been elevated to a fine art by the Democrat Party. They are experts at race baiting. It is a central strategy of the Democrat Party. They have become the party of wickedness, Calvin. What say ye?
That's absolutely true. I mean, their leaders are demon possessed. Their key leaders like Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, and others. If you carefully follow them and watch them, you'll see them sometimes do some strange behaviors. This has been documented. And many of their key brothers and sisters in history were demon possessed too. Hitler certainly was. Stalin was. Marx was, and Lenin all were. And this divide and conquer, it's really ironic that they are dividing to conquer even their own people. And it works. And look at diversity. That's a divisive term. Diversity came from affirmative action because affirmative action hadn't expanded out as far as they wanted it to. I mean, as soon as they got as much gained by affirmative action, which is legal discrimination against young white men, then they went to an alternate concept, diversity, which attempts to accomplish the same thing, breaking up the sexes, turning male against female, old against young, or young against old, white against black, black against white, and so on and on and on down the line, just no end to it. And so those are ways that they represent themselves as being, some kind of righteous thing that they're doing, some kind of good thing, but in reality, it's just the opposite. These are methods of destruction cloaked in, a pretty face.
Yes, amen. That's exactly right, folks. I've been talking with author Calvin Fields. The book is The Hypnotic Communist: The Satanic Seduction of America. If you're interested in further research, data, very meticulous research, footnoted references, get the book, The Hypnotic Communist: The Satanic Seduction of America. It explains what is happening right now. Calvin, thank you so much for joining me today. We only scratched the surface here, brother, but it was a very, very educational and equipping conversation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for the opportunity.
God bless you, my brother. Folks, that's all we have
Thank you.
time for today. Please, please, please share this with your friends and your family. Get them up to speed on what's happening in the streets of America in Washington, D.C. right now, today, at this very time. We must be informed and know the enemy so that we can fight them with righteousness by the power of the Holy Spirit in us. God bless you. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you next week. And remember, renewing our minds is not an option.